especially, we're going to prepare exactly the same way for New Zealand. Whether we start as favourites, probably because we're the only unbeaten side in the competition. But I don't know if that adds to the pressure. I think the semi-final is pressure enough. Playing a top side New Zealand is pressure enough.
Meanwhile, the Pakistan women's cricket team did what it did in the T20 International Series against South Africa, avoiding a clean sweep. They beat the Proteas by 119 runs in the annual Black Day ODI at Kingsmead in Durban. Pakistan opener Sadaf Shammas scored an excellent 97 from 82 balls to lead her side to a formidable total of 306 for 8 after they were asked to bat first. They then bowled out their hosts for 187 to secure a comprehensive victory in the third and the final one-day international of the series. Now, boxing news. Namibia's WBO Global Super Bantamweight champion Philippus Energy Ngitumbwa will take on the highly rated Colombian Leonardo Carrillo of Colombia in Windhoek on the 9th of May. Ngitumbwa, who has a record of 17 wins and 2 defeats, is ranked 6th in the world by the influential boxing website boxrec.com. He, however, can expect a tough encounter against Carrillo, who also has an impressive record of 20 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat, while he is ranked 14th in the world by the WBOA, that's World Boxing Association. Carrillo's only defeat came against Muhammad Shekov of Uzbekistan more than 2 years ago, but since then he went on a winning streak of 3 fights. Let's end with golf news. South African golf sensation Casey Jarvis has won the 115th Investec South African Open Championship at Stellenbosch Golf Club to not just add his name to South African golf history, but also secure exemptions into the Masters in April and the Open in July this year. As golf dreams go, it's one of the biggest for this young star of the game who has come through the ranks of Golf South Africa and who, with this victory, has now won every major national amateur and professional trophy in South African golf. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Right, it's time to find out what's happening in the world of business, and we say a very good morning to you, Tabiso Luhuko.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says that they will continue to monitor the retrieval process of the 5 trapped men at the Ekapa minerals shaft this amidst a looming liquidation process. In a statement, the mine says that the decision to liquidate followed careful assessment and that it will continue to meet its financial obligations, or rather it cannot meet its financial obligations due to the given prolonged global diamond market downturn exacerbated by the recent tragic incident. The mine has since halted all mining activities in Ekapa in Kimberley in the Northern Cape province. Karabo Siyoko has more.
Workers camped outside Ikapa mine waiting for answers regarding their sudden dismissal. They say the liquidation came as a shock and that the mine did not prepare them of this decision.
South Africa's Limpopo Provincial Economic Development, Environment and Tourism Department says it's revitalizing some of its nature reserves to attract domestic and international tourists. The department, however, acknowledges that some of its nature reserves are no longer operational since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. At some nature reserves, infrastructure meant to protect wildlife and the natural environment. Department spokesperson Zaid Kala says they will implement recovery strategies.
Limpopo has effortlessly managed to bounce back from the hard lockdown experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected the tourism sector for almost a 3-year-long period, whereby the tourism sector at some stage experienced a total shutdown.
The governor of the Bank of Botswana, Lesego Moseki, says the economy is expected to continue to operate below full capacity in the short to medium term. This after the Monetary Policy Committee unanimously maintained the country's main interest rate at 3.5% for the second time in a row. Addressing the media following the MPC meeting in Gaborone, Moseki said subdued demand has driven inflationary pressures.
The increase in inflation was attributable to a higher rate of price increases for food and health services. The Monetary Policy Committee forecast inflation to increase into the medium term.
Libya's Mabruk oil operations has resumed operation increases at Al Mabruk oil field, with initial pumping rates expected to be between 25 and 30,000 barrels per day. In a statement, the state-owned National Oil Corporation says production resumed at the field and started on Saturday following the successful commissioning of a new early production unit. According to the company's website, Mabruk Oil Operations is one of the oil companies operating on behalf of NOC and Total E&P. Oil prices have surged and shares slid as military conflict in the Middle East looked set to last week's, sending investors flocking to the relative safety of the dollar and the gold. Brent jumped 4.5% to $76.07 a barrel, though it had briefly topped $82 at one stage, while U.S. crude climbed 3.9% to $69.59 per barrel. Gold rose 1.0% to $5,032.7 an ounce. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 361. Botswana 13 bula 21. Kenya 128 shillings 645, and Zambia 18 kwacha 83. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5.12. Russia 77 rubles 280. India 91 rupees 5. China 6 yuan 86. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 15.92 rand, 74 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Gold is trading at $5,342, while platinum $2,365 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $76.17 barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
6:42 Central African Time is your time. Let's take you to this story now. Technology experts say that mobile devices will continue to evolve into an all-encompassing tool that defines modern life. They say that from enabling instant communication to transforming industries and global connectivity, their impact is undeniable. As Nhlanhla Mahlangu reports, mobile phones continue to be a gateway to information, communication, and new experiences.
The world got the first ever portable mobile phone in the shape of the Motorola Dyna TAC 8000X in 1983. A few years later, more devices were introduced into the market. Mobile phones have evolved from bulky analog devices into powerful AI-driven pocket computers. They've transformed dramatically to become information and communication hubs fundamental to modern life. They've also transformed from simple communication tools to indispensable devices that shape every aspect of our lives. Arthur Goldstack, analyst and technology expert, says the introduction of smartphones in the 2000s changed the mobile phone landscape dramatically.
The first cell phones were just cell phones. You could make calls and nothing else. SMS arrived shortly thereafter, and then slowly they began introducing interactive features, but you couldn't even send email on the first cell phones. Gradually, they evolved. BlackBerry made the next big leap with simplifying email on the cell phone, leading to the era of the Crackberry. And then the big breakthrough came with Apple launching the iPhone. But it wasn't just the iPhone with the touchscreen that changed the industry. It was also the introduction of the App Store. And with that, the ability to turn the smartphone into a tool of productivity took off in a very big way. Since then, Android has entered the picture. It's the dominant operating system today, with the Play Store being the equivalent of the App Store. But it's the access to apps that is so fundamentally powerful in terms of anyone with a smartphone having this gateway to the world of possibilities open to them.
He says mobile devices' evolution, marked by rapid technology advancements, has made them central to communication, productivity, entertainment, and global connectivity.
The next big evolution is going to be the extent to which AI is built into smartphones. Right now, you see AI mostly used to support the camera functionality of phones and to edit images, for example. But very quickly, you're going to see apps emerge that are pure AI tools and that bring the ordinary consumer into what they call the agentic AI era, where everyone has an AI agent that they are able to use as a companion, as a support tool, and as even a tutor for school kids, or a doctor, you could say a part-time doctor giving medical advice whenever you face an issue. The possibilities are endless, but they also indicate the vast range of possibilities that are opened up by the combination of the interactive smartphone, the level of integration of apps into those smartphones, and then the extent to which AI becomes an empowering tool built on top of those two previous revolutions.
Justin Hume, Vice President for Mobile at Samsung South Africa, says the mobile phone market has radically transformed over the last 30 years. He says they've come a long way in design, features, capabilities, from being a luxury item to an essential part of our daily lives.
We have seen the phone shift. So it's moved from being this device that takes calls to being a device that gave us data, gave us access into this idea called applications. And now today we do our banking from our phone. We watch YouTube from our phone. We engage with friends and everything through Facebook, whatever it might be. And we're starting to create a lot of content ourselves, right? Now the phone becomes a content creation, editing suite. I can probably do more on this device than most people can do in a proper studio. And I can do it quicker, easier, and at a far lower cost in that regard. So that is evolving. But these are needs of consumers, and we're meeting those needs there. But the other thing is that you don't lead a linear life. You don't do one thing in your phone, then go to your PC, then go to, you know what I mean, like that. But it is getting exciting. There's XR technology coming through. The growth of that type of augmented experience within wearables is very much alive and well. And importantly, using these devices for integrated health and AI assistance on our health is really an exciting driver.
Today's smartphones have become an essential tool for daily life, integrating powerful processors, sensors, and AI-driven features. They have multimedia hubs capturing high-quality photos and videos, streaming music and movies, amongst others. The app ecosystem has exploded, with millions of apps offering everything from social networking, banking and shopping to productivity and fitness tracking. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
In just a bit, we go to the Middle East and talking about escalations there of the new wave of Israeli airstrikes on Tehran on Sunday. This after there was an initial joint US-Israeli strike that began on Saturday and killed Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. We discuss the impact of Khamenei's death, Iran's leadership dynamics, and wider regional and global consequences as a result.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimakato Pasha. How to remain consistent with gyms, Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, you know, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking. You wish people could and now you want to put me on the spot.
Do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Overnight tension in the Middle East has escalated after a new wave of Israeli airstrikes on Tehran on Sunday, following initial joint US-Israeli strikes that began on Saturday and killed Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iranian forces have since launched retaliatory missile and drone attacks against Israeli and US targets, raising fears of a wider conflict and causing disruption to regional security, shipping and energy routes. Joining us now is Professor Ahmed Jazbay, who is political scientist at the University of South Africa, as well as a senior researcher at the Media Review Network, to discuss the impact of Khamenei's death, Iran's leadership dynamics, and the wider regional and global consequences. Professor Jazbay, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Asanda. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. This latest round of attacks that started on Saturday with the killing of Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and then continued with Israeli airstrikes on Sunday. How would you assess the scale and the strategic intent of it?
It is very clearly from the onset that these are decapitation strikes by the American-Israeli entities meant to debilitate and, the leadership of the Islamic Republic. You know that former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has also been assassinated yesterday, in addition to Imam Khomeini, in addition to the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So these are intended to be decapitation strikes on the country, intended to create a power vacuum. And we've seen President Trump now urging Iranians to get on the streets and take their country sort of in a kind of regime change that he had in mind. So right now, but I think on the other hand, they have underestimated Iran's resolve to indirect retaliation. Given the wide scale of the strikes in all the GCC, the 6 GCC countries, and the American bases and Israeli assets that are there, the strikes on the Israeli entity and their their strategic assets in the region. So what we're seeing is essentially that Iran views these U.S.-Israeli strikes as an existential threat to the Islamic Republic as we know it. And this is the intention of the American-Israeli strikes to begin with.
What will this retaliation from Iran mean then for regional stability? They responded with missile and drone strikes against Israeli and U.S. targets, as you say.
Yeah, what we risk is a wider regional conflict. And this is something that Israel wants, a wider regional conflict. It was something that they intended from the outset, to drag in the likes of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and so on. While these have condemned the attacks on American bases and Israeli assets within their territories, they have not joined. I think they are resisting the urge right now. Although they do have plans, we know that the UAE has withdrawn its ambassador and closed its embassy in Tehran. So it pretty much may be a matter of time before these countries join in the U.S.-Israeli strikes in the region, and then we'll see much more a wider conflict. We'll see much more disruption towards, for example, oil production and oil. We know the Straits of Hormuz, which is 20% of the world's oil, flows through that, has been closed by Iran. So we're going to see this morning oil prices spike. So we're going to see and this is not going to be a quick war. I cannot doubt it. I know Trump wanted a quick war, but given Iran's retaliation to these illegal strikes, it's likely to be a long war because, as I stated, Israel primarily wants the Islamic Republic gone. The leadership is wanting being gone, but it wants regime change. Totally, a more compliant regime, given the former dictator, the Shah's son, is being lined up as a potential successor. But we've seen Iran is viewing this as an existential threat, and which is why this war is likely to go on very long, despite some back-channel communications going on at the moment.
With Khamenei gone and a temporary leadership council now in place, how stable is Iran's political leadership and what challenges could it face now?
That's a very good question. Iran it was built for, the Islamic Republic after the revolution of 1979 was built especially under the leadership of Imam Khomeini, the successor of Khomeini, who took over in 1989. It was built for these sort of shocks to its and threats to its existence. We've seen the Leadership Council, which was adopted yesterday, consisted of the president, representatives from the IRGC, the Iranian Revolution Guard Corps, and so on. So this Leadership Council was designed for this sort of arrangement. I think they foresaw that the kind of intelligence that the U.S. and Israel have on the location of Khomeini and the president and many other people is unprecedented. We know that the intelligence is pinpoint intelligence. So they would have obviously preempted this, which is why there's the Leadership Council in Tehran to deal with, which is sort of an emergency structure to deal with now the shock of losing their supreme leader, who is the ultimate decision maker and has the last say on all matters, especially strategic matters. So at the moment, the Leadership Council, consisting of the president, the foreign minister, and a few others, will deal with matters of the war going forward. But what we must understand is that in Iran, what happened in 1979 was a revolution. There was a fundamental change in society. It was not just a change at the top. It was a horizontal as well as vertical change within the structure of Iranian society. So Iran, the revolution is deeply entrenched within society, which is why it is very difficult. And the CIA, by its own assessments, have said that it's very difficult to enact regime change in Iran, given the structures in society, the religious structures, the political structures, the various military structures, of which the IRGC is the most important. So, regime change is very difficult. It's not unlikely. We mustn't put that out of the but it's obviously that Iran has been shocked, and it's been shocked and it's been hit to its core, which is why it is retaliating with such ferocity. But in the short term, the regime is safe. But the longer this carries on, it will test the resolve and the structures that were put in place by Imam Khomeini, his successor, after the revolution.
On a legal and moral legitimacy standpoint, in terms of these operations, there have been debates internationally about whether these strikes are legitimate under international law, some calling them preemptive and others saying they violate the UN Charter. How do you assess it?
Very simply, these are illegal strikes. I mean, to call them preemptive strike is to be economical with the truth. Iran was negotiating in good faith with the United States, and the night before the actual strikes, the Omani foreign minister said very clearly that they're very close to a deal because Iran has agreed not to stockpile nuclear weapons. It was clear that the date for the strikes were set by the United States and Israel. These violate international law because primarily there were negotiations in place. Iran has not attacked any country. It's very clear. Iran has not had any aggression towards any country, a direct aggression. Even in the July strikes last year, it was the Israelis that launched an illegal strike and the Americans that followed. So in between 1980 and 1988, during the Iran-Iraq war, that was a war by Saddam Hussein, supported by the Americans to overthrow the Islamic Republic. So Iran has not attacked any country in the region, but has been attacked. So, the laws of war, the United Nations Charter doesn't allow for sort of preemptive strikes in these sort of scenarios. It's in the same way during the Iraq War, it was illegal because the United Nations didn't support it. If it's going to be legal according to national law, the United Nations needs to rubber stamp it. It never rubber stamped it during the Iraq War. It never rubber stamped it now. It did give during the post 9/11 during the strikes. There was a UN resolution to supporting that. So although that is morally reprehensible, it was legally defensible. In this instant, it is morally indefensible and legally indefensible. But we've seen that it's not international law, it is not international humanitarian law that drives the actions of the imperial West. It is the law of the jungle. And we've seen through Trump board of people that is trying to sideline the United Nations.
We really appreciate your valuable input on this topic, and thank you for your views.
Thank you for having me, Asanda.
Pleasure. Professor Ahmed Jazbeh, we're completely out of time there. Wish we could continue. He's a political scientist at the University of South Africa and senior researcher at the Media Review Network, helping us unpack the implications of Israel and U.S. strikes on Iran. Let's enter the second hour of Rise and Shine now. We are Channel Africa, the African perspective. We give you our news update. Here's Jolane Tulo Ngwepe. It's 7:07 Central African time.
SABC News, the African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Loud explosions have been reported in the Lebanese capital Beirut as the Israeli military begins hitting targets belonging to Hezbollah. This comes after Hezbollah said it fired rockets and drones into Israel in response to the killing of Iran's supreme leader. The BBC's Joe Floto has the story.
The chief of staff here in Israel has said that Hezbollah has opened a new front against Israel. So the IDF are taking this as an opportunity to attack a wide range of targets. We're hearing from Lebanon that the south of the country has received a number of airstrikes, and inside Beirut, probably more than a dozen targets have been struck, and the IDF saying that they have killed what they describe as senior terrorists this morning.
The South African Communist Party, SACP, has urged government to condemn the actions of the US and Israel. The Communist Party was speaking after its two-day Lekgotla in Johannesburg following the outbreak of the conflict in the Middle East at the weekend. Party national spokesperson Mbulelo Mandlana.
What is going on in Israel and the Middle East more generally, what was happening in Palestine and therefore what is happening in Iran now, all those conflicts are connected, and they have one thing in common, and that is the advancement of the American interests in that region. So as far as we're concerned, the South African position should be to resist rather than to plead for the actions of the American government.
Moving on to other news, 6 people have been killed in a helicopter crash in western Kenya, including a member of parliament. Police and government officials say the helicopter crashed in Nandi County in the North Rift region on Saturday. The cause was not immediately clear. County Police Commander Samuel Mukusi told Kenyan television station Citizen TV that the MP, the pilot and 4 other people had died. President William Ruto identified the lawmaker as Johanna Ngeno of Emerua Dikiri constituency in a post on X. Police in Namibia are investigating the cause of a luxury train crash that killed 2 crew members from near Keetmanshoop yesterday. The train, operated by Rovos Rail, travelling south from Windhoek, struck a washed-away bridge span at roughly 285 kilometres from Ariamsvlei near the South African border. CEO of Transnamib, Desmond van Jaarsveld, says the cause of the incident is under investigation, adding that the injured have received medical treatment. And finally, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities has called for calm while further investigations continue into endocrine disrupting chemicals associated with potential hormonal interference were found by researchers from the University of the Free State in various sanitary pads and panty liners in South Africa. The department spokesperson Cassius Selala says the public will be informed as further verified information becomes available. He says they are engaging with the University of the Free State to assess current regulatory frameworks that govern menstrual health products. Silala says the purpose of the scientific research conducted is not to create fear and panic, but to inform and empower consumers, policymakers and health professionals.
The department views menstrual health and sanitary dignity as a critical component of gender equality and public health. In addition, the department welcomes the call made by the National Consumer Commission to initiate an investigation and a regulatory review process that will assist in ensuring that menstrual health products are safe, affordable, and accessible.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Namibia's brave gladiators made history by winning the COSAFA Women's Championship. And Casey Jarvis wins South African Open, gets sport in Masters and the Open. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Wherever the hour finds you, across the world, here's your morning African lens on the world's leading story. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
A very good morning to you and welcome to Channel Africa Radio. Yeah, we're streaming live on the internet, channelafrica.co.za. And let me tell you, you've got to stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Watch or listen anytime, anywhere on channelafrica.co.za and on the Channel Africa mobile app, which is SABC Plus, or via DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. My name is Peter Ndoro and I'm with Asanda Bheda this morning. And we're taking a look at big stories. Coming up shortly, we're going to be unpacking this massive story in the Middle East. And there are fears that we are entering a period of, world war. We're not sure, but hopefully we'll be able to unpack that story a little bit more for you in this next half hour. Asanda, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the second hour of Rise and Shine, coming to you live from South Africa in Johannesburg. That's where our Channel Africa studios are. So we bring you news and current affairs from the African perspective. One of those news items in this hour will be going to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where reports have emerged from the country about the discovery of mass graves. The governor of South Kivu province says 2 mass graves containing at least 171 bodies have been discovered on the outskirts of Uvira. So that story and more, of course, coming up. You can connect with us on channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app, via mobile phones. You can find us on our various social media platforms of X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I think I said Facebook, and YouTube at Channel Africa 1 is our handle.
Using Scholar Transport comes with responsibilities. Every learner has a role to play in keeping themselves, their friends, and the driver safe. Stay seated and behave responsibly. Avoid shouting, pushing, standing, or moving around inside the vehicle at any time. Think safety first. Remember that safety starts before the journey begins and continues until you are safely off the road. Good behavior saves lives. Your actions matter. Issued by the National Department of Transport.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
The voice of the continent, now online, with all your sports fixtures, lifestyle, and more.
Last week saw the 141st anniversary of the 1885 Berlin Conference, a meeting of European powers that partitioned Africa without a single African at the table. The borders drawn in European capitals would go on to shape the continent's political geography, state formations, conflicts, and even economic structures for generations to come. More than a century later, questions remain. Are Africa's contemporary challenges still rooted in those decisions in 1885? Are Africa's contemporary challenges still rooted in those decisions made? And what would it mean to truly move beyond the Berlin legacy today? Well, to help us reflect on this, I spoke to one of Africa's leading scholars on coloniality and decolonization, Professor Sabelo J. Ndlovu-Gacheni. And I began by asking him about the Berlin Conference and why it has had such a profound effect on the continent to date.
Yeah, in fact, the Berlin Conference, a lot of people make a mistake of looking at it as a foundational event. But to me, it is a culmination of other events before. And I will say that I think the best beginning is to go back to the racial hierarchization of human population. and that racial hierarchization becoming a technology to identify who to colonize, who to enslave, who to subject to genocide, and who to consider their space as empty and available for imperial colonial designs. And the Berlin Conference actually fit into that scheme. Initially, they identified us as enslavable beings, the ones who have no soul, who can be enslaved. And then when it comes to Berlin, 1884, 1885, they begin now to consider Africa as though it was an empty space, whereby they can sit at Berlin, use the symbolism of cutting a cake, something to eat, and then they begin to cut, this piece is yours, that one is yours, that one is yours. So the cartography of Berlin is not the original cartography. There are other cartographies before. In fact, the first cartography is the continental cartographies. And now when they were coming to Berlin, they were now doing these colonies, the cartographies of colonies themselves, the pieces which they were sharing among themselves. And the ironic part, the person who presided over the meeting in Berlin, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, he was uniting Germany at the time while he was fragmenting Africa at the same time. So the importance of Berlin then is that it actually lays the foundation of ownership of other people's spaces by some other people. And the idea being that they never considered us as people. They considered us as though we're absent, we're a present which was absent in their imaginaries, particularly the racist imaginaries. Bearing in mind that in the racist imaginaries, the idea was that anything outside Europe was empty. It was available for discovery. It was available for you discover, you conquer, you name it, you own it, you exploit it. And that was the logic behind the Berlin Conference. And that logic, unfortunately, we have not reversed it up to today. We still live in these territories, the territorial spaces, the cartographical design is originally from Berlin.
So the reality is the processes had started long before Berlin. However, the cartography, as you've described it, is what was finalized in a sense in Berlin, and the reality that we live with now in terms of territories, country borders, and the passports we carry.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, that is very true. And the major problem perhaps is it happens in 1963 when the Africans had an opportunity to revise this when they were forming the Organization of African Unity. And then they decide that the colonial boundaries are inviolable. In other words, let's not violate them. If we change them, there will be chaos. And if you say that, we have fallen into imperial designs because they always wanted to naturalize what they have constructed and they make it the natural order of things. Anything else is chaos, according to them. And it is really unfortunate that the founding fathers of independence, they fall into that trap instead of reconstructing and reproposing other cartographies. They fall into that. Of course, we need to put a caveat that they tried to create a federal formations, which, of course, global imperial designs was always torpedoing throughout. But they never pushed as much as we expected them to push, that we needed to make the continent in our own image. We don't make the continent in the image of other people and the interests of other people.
The reality that we have today, I'm just wondering now then, had we done something in 1963, could the story of today be different? And maybe I'm asking, a lot of the tensions, a lot of the crises, a lot of the conflicts of today, can we go back to Berlin and say that it gave birth to a lot of the conflicts of today?
most of them, particularly the the bilateral conflicts between one state and another. We can go to the Great Lakes region, which is actually the epicenter of some of these problems. You can tell that the boundaries really created a lot of havoc. In the DRC, ever since the 1960s, have never witnessed peace because of these random boundaries, which put some of the people in Rwanda, some in Uganda, some in the so-called DRC, and up to now they are still contesting who belongs where, who doesn't belong where. So it was going to be possible because there were three options available to the founding fathers and the founding mothers of Africa during that time. One was to inherit the territories as they are, which was the easier way out. It is what the global imperial designs wanted. Just inherit, put black people in power, but run it as it is. The second one was the most difficult one. It was like reversing the wheel, whereby they will say, why didn't you go back to the pre-colonial setup? And by then the argument was that we cannot reverse the wheel of history. It has moved to this, what the reality which we are in, so we can't move. Then the most attractive but the most difficult to do was to invent something new, which we call Pan-African Africa. In other words, if we created Pan-African Africa, then this issue of boundaries won't arise because we were going now to have the continental boundary. But we're going also to deal with the continental boundary by talking about global Africa, Africa plus the Africans outside it, so that we unbound this issue of being African and being confined to a container which we never created.
Fast forward to the modern day, and we have the African Continental Free Trade Area that we're busy building, and we're hoping is a ticket to a new order. Earlier, you talked about option 3. Is the AFCTFA a key to unlocking that option 3 that we talked about earlier?
Interesting that it is coming so late, but it is indeed part of the building blocks to create a Pan-African Africa. But the major problem is that, again, they are falling into thinking in economic terms, as though thinking in the political terms, in humanitarian terms, in dignitarian terms is not important. Because if you then create an impression that Africa is a market, you are messing up some other things. You are defining things in the logic of capital. Whereas in Africa, we say Africa is people. Africa is people and their dignity matters. Of course, they can become a market. You can turn them into a market, but it's not fundamentally the starting point that we are a market. But that building block is very important at the moment. It is something which we say it came too late. It must have come earlier. As you remember, the efforts of Kwame Nkrumah, who wanted the United States of Africa as early as 1963. But in order to make anything come into reality, it won't come into reality naturally. We need to declare it and work towards it. Then others said, no, don't do that. If you do that, it will mess up things. Let's go for a gradualist, as though things will come together naturally. But instead of coming together naturally into a Pan-African Africa, they came naturally into xenophobia, into territorial, what you call narrow nationalisms, into all these other sides of politics rather than the positive aspects.
I think we agree that the borders drawn at Berlin have had a long-lasting effect, and one perhaps that might not be reversed in the way that we understand borders. Could the identity of Africa and Africans be changed genuinely in the future so that Berlin is a figment of our memory rather than something that we continue to carry?
I think one issue for certain from the work which I have been doing, I'm always finding out that we are fearful of rethinking thinking. We are fearful of even unthinking thinking. We want to continue with the thinking which we inherit from other people. But it is important that we go to drawing board and rethink thinking itself and even unthink some of the things. For instance, if you look at our region, the SADC region, you'll find that linguistically we are related, culturally we are related. But we're still worshipping these boundaries which are fragmenting us instead of actually maximizing the cultural capital, the linguistic capital which we have, and they come together. We are even defeated by the imperialists themselves who attempted the Federation of Central Africa. We can't even do that. These guys, when they were white in northern Rhodesia, in Malawi, in Zimbabwe, they decided, no, let's come and form a federation. But as for us, we can't even build on that to unite our people. And the issue is not even with the people, it is with the political elites. It is with the intellectuals not actually producing the right knowledge which actually unites Africa, but they create knowledge which actually fragments Africa. We have knowledge of South Africa, knowledge of Zimbabwe, knowledge of Malawi, knowledge of Mozambique, knowledge of, as though these colonial boundaries are actually epistemic boundaries. I think if the intellectuals lead and they break these boundaries epistemologically, then the political elite will need to follow. Thirdly, the ordinary people themselves are already relating among themselves, and it is only the elites who come to spoil everything.
That was Professor Sabelo J. Ndlovu Gacheni, who's a professor and holder of a Canada Research Chair, Tier 1 in Pluralistic Societies, Epistemic Pluralism and Ecologies of Knowledge at the Department of History at the University of Calgary in Canada.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
South Africa's Deputy Minister of International Relations, Thandi Moraga, has highlighted the importance of educating rural communities about climate change. She held a community meeting at Ndunda village as part of an outreach program, underlining South Africa's role as the current and incoming chair of the Southern African Development Community, or SADC. Mtobisi Mkalipi reports.
South Africa has started preparing for the chairship of the Southern African Development Community, SADC, for the fourth time. The country is an interim chair following Madagascar's decision to relinquish the position due to certain political developments in their country. The Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Thandi Moraga, led a community outreach program at Ndunda, a village near Mozambique and Eswatini. Moraga says governments in the region should prioritize educating communities about climate change and its effects.
And we want to utilize our SADC chairmanship to speak about issues of disaster resilience and also how we need to preserve the climate. Because you know that during our G20 presidency, we did elevate the issues of building disaster resilience economies to that agenda of that multilateral body. And now we need to start domesticating all what we have been saying during our G20 presidency.
Nkomazi is among the communities that were seriously affected by the recent floods. Economic Development and Tourism MEC Jester Seidel says such events help citizens to learn more about climate change and environmental preservation.
When you look at the infrastructure, road infrastructure in Nkomazi, most of these bridges are very low, and people have built along these bridges. The infrastructure is on top in terms of the housing infrastructure and low-lying bridges. So as we move towards building a resilient infrastructure, we should be bringing our communities along. Issues around waste management as well. You look around our villages, illegal dumpings that are taking place, which also contributes to issues around climate change.
Some of Ntunda village residents who attended the event had this to say.
To learn in such programs about climate change, it helps us to be prepared. More especially, I see community stakeholders are present here, business owners are present here to get the information so that they remain prepared, so that they remain prepared and resilient.
We are here about the climate change, but we don't have more information. Coming to an event like this, where they will educate us about climate change, it is give us more advantage. We wish to have better understanding about the climate change.
The theme for Imbizo was enhancing climate-resistant tourism and infrastructure. I'm Toby Simkhalipi in Nkomazi, Mpumalanga.
So it's 28 minutes past 7 Central African time. And just before we go to the news headlines, let me take you back and...
Tension.
Sorry? Okay, all right. Let's take a look at this story now. In fact, we'll take a look at this story later because I don't think we're going to have time to do it. But let's take a quick march back in history on this day. And today in 1970, Rhodesia, as it was known then, declared its independence from... in fact, declared itself a monarchy. So the white minority government at the time, led by Ian Smith, formally declared the country a republic. And that was following the unilateral Declaration of Independence in 1965. And the republic remained unrecognized by the international community during the protracted Bush War. Zimbabwe eventually getting its independence in 1980, of course, after historic talks at Lancaster House in 1977 onwards, 78. So, yeah, Ian Smith and his regime declaring itself a Republic of Rhodesia on this day in 1970. It's 7:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Dwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines. Loud explosions have been reported in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, as the Israeli military begins hitting targets belonging to Hezbollah. The Iranian embassy in South Africa has committed to work together with the Department of International Relations to assist South Africans in Iran. This follows violent attacks by the US and Israel on Iran and the killing of the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, over the weekend. And finally, 6 people have been killed in a helicopter crash in western Kenya, including a member of parliament. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's now catch up with what's happening in the world of sports. We get our update from Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. We kick off with football news. Namibia have been crowned champions of the 2025 COSAFA Championship. Namibia had to come from behind to beat host Banyana 2-1 in extra time. It took 36 minutes for Ntabiseng Majia to put Banyana in the lead after a defensive blunder by Namibia. But Mudidanjo Hanavi scored a brilliant goal for Namibia 9 minutes into the second half. Then Namibia took the lead early in extra time through Memory Ngoda. The goal was enough to lead Namibia to their first COSAFA crown. On to cricket news, South Africa have secured top spot in Group 1 in the Super 8s of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup in India and Sri Lanka. They recorded a comfortable 5-wicket victory over Zimbabwe in their last match in Delhi. The Proteas, who were already guaranteed a place in the semi-final match, remain the only unbeaten team in the tournament. While the Proteas had never won a limited overs World Cup title, coach Shukri Conrad feels they are ready for battle in the knockout stages.
I still feel that in the field maybe we can create a bit more opportunities. Our catching has let us down a little bit, but yeah, I don't want to be ultra critical now. We're playing some really good cricket, and as has been the last couple of weeks, we'll double down on what we've done in the last couple of weeks and do that again over the next couple of days. So again, fly out tomorrow, rest up well, and then see how the guys pull up, who needs what in their games, and then we crack on.
They will now play New Zealand in the first semi-final in Kolkata on Wednesday. The Black Caps finished second in Group 2. Conrad says the C word has changed.
As for the C word, I think there's another one for it, cupcakes. That's all we kind of enjoy that. But no, there's always pressure, and it's really about embracing that pressure. And we don't do things any differently. You know, we're going to prepare exactly the same way for New Zealand. Whether we start as favourites, probably because we're the only unbeaten side in the competition. But I don't know if that adds to the pressure. I think the semi-final is pressure enough. Playing a top side New Zealand is pressure enough.
Meanwhile, the Pakistan women's cricket team did what it did in the T20 International Series against South Africa, avoiding a clean sweep. They beat the Proteas by 119 runs in the annual Black Day ODI at Kingsmead in Durban. Pakistan opener Sadaf Sharmas scored an excellent 97 from 82 balls to lead a side to a formidable total of 306 for 8 after they were asked to bat first. They then bowled out their hosts for 187 to secure a comprehensive victory in the third and the final one-day international of the series. We end with golf news. South African golf sensation Casey Jarvis has won the 115th Investec South African Open Championship at Stellenbosch Golf Club to not just add his name to South African golf history, but also secure exemptions into the Masters in April and the Open in July this year. As golf dreams go, it's one of the biggest for this young star of the game who has come through the ranks of Golf RSA and who with this victory has now won every major national amateur and professional trophy in South African golf. In one of the most composed rounds of his professional career, Jarvis beat a tough Stellenbosch Golf Club course, rain and lightning delay, to close with a final round of 67 and win by 3 strokes on 14 under par. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business and at the business desk this morning. Good morning to you, Tabiso Lehuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says that they will continue to monitor the retrieval process of the 5 trapped men at the Ikapa minerals shaft. This amidst a looming liquidation process. In a statement, the mine says that the decision to liquidate followed a careful assessment and that it cannot continue to meet its financial obligations given the prolonged global market downturn exacerbated by the recent tragic incident. The mine has since halted all mining activities at Ikapa in Kimberley in the Northern Cape province. Karabo Suyoko has more.
Workers camped outside Ikapa mine waiting for answers regarding their sudden dismissal. They say the liquidation came as a shock and that the mine did not prepare them of this decision.
South Africa's provincial Economic Development, Environment and Tourism Department in Limpopo says it's revitalizing some of its nature reserves to attract domestic and international tourists. The department, however, acknowledges that some of its nature reserves are no longer operational since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. At some nature reserves, infrastructure meant to protect wildlife and the natural environment. Department spokesperson Zaid Kala says that they will implement recovery strategies.
Limpopo has effortlessly managed to bounce back from the hard lockdown experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected the tourism sector for almost a 3-year-long period, whereby the tourism sector at some stage experienced a total shutdown.
The governor of the Bank of Botswana, Lesego Moseki, says that the economy is expected to continue to operate below full capacity in the short to medium term. This after the Monetary Policy Committee unanimously maintained the country's main interest rate at 3.5% for the second time in a row. Addressing the media following the MPC meeting in Gaborone, Moseki said subdued demand had driven inflationary pressures.
The increase in inflation was attributable to a higher rate of price increases for food and health services. The Monetary Policy Committee forecast inflation to increase into the medium term.
Libya's Mabruk oil operations has resumed operations, increasing at Mabruk oil field, with initial pumping rates expected to be between 25 and 30,000 barrels per day. In a statement, the state-owned National Oil Corporation says production resumption at the field started on Saturday, following the successful commissioning of a new early production unit. According to the company's website, Mabruk Oil Operations is one of the oil companies operating on behalf of NOC and Total E&P. Oil prices have surged and shares slid as military conflict in the Middle East looks set to last week, sending investors flocking to the relative safety of the dollar and gold. Brent jumped to 4.5% to $76.07 a barrel, though it had briefly topped $82 at one stage, while the U.S. crude climbed 3.9% to $69.59 per barrel. Gold rose 1.0% to $5,327 an ounce. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 361. Botswana 13 Buddha 21. Kenya 128 shillings 645, and Zambia 18 kwacha 83. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar 5 real 12, Russia 77 rubles 280, India 91 rupees 5, China 6 yuan 86, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 15 rand 92 cents, 74 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Gold $5,342, while platinum is at $2,365 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $76.17 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabitolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet.
Channel 802.
Bank of Botswana, BOB's Monetary Policy Committee, or MPC, yesterday unanimously maintained the Southern African country's main interest rate at 3.5% for the second time in a row. Addressing the media following the MPC meeting in Gaborone, the BOB Governor, Lesego Museki, said the economy is expected to continue to operate below full capacity in the short to medium term, therefore subdued demand-driven inflationary pressures. Channel Africa's correspondent in Botswana, Shingirai Madondo, reports.
According to Statistics Botswana, the neighboring country statistical agents, headline inflation increased slightly from 3.9% in December 2025 to 4.1% in January 2026, remaining within the medium-term objective range of 3 to 6%. Lesego Museki, Botswana's central bank governor, attributed the slight increase to a push up in prices for food and health services.
The increase in inflation was attributable to a higher rate of price increases for food and health services. The Monetary Policy Committee forecast inflation to increase into the medium term, averaging 4.5% in 2026 and 4.7% in 2027.
Botswana's healthcare system, which was largely funded from diamond sales, is in dire straits due to shortage of critical medicines and equipment, a development that resulted in higher price rates for health services. Although President Duma Boko declared a 3-month national public health emergency in August last year, the situation has grown from bad to worse in the public health facilities. It is against this backdrop that Museki has summed up that there is a greater risk of inflation growing at a faster rate than anticipated by Statistics Botswana, due to other factors like increases in electricity tariffs and transport fares.
Overall, there's a greater risk of inflation being higher than currently projected, mainly due to the proposed increases in electricity tariffs by the Botswana Power Corporation in April 2026, which would have a notable inflationary impact if it materializes. The anticipated increase in public transport fares is also expected to be inflationary. In addition, the outbreak of the foot and mouth disease in Botswana in January 2026 and the resultant disease management measures through livestock movement and slaughter restrictions, albeit the recent easing to allow for abattoir slaughtering mainly, may lead to higher food inflation.
Despite the headwinds, Museki is however optimistic that the economy is expected to recover in 2026 with a projected 3.1% growth. He said the recovery is anticipated to be driven primarily by expected stronger performance in non-mining sectors, supported by the effective implementation of economic diversification initiatives under the 12th National Development Plan NDP 12 and the Botswana Economic Transformation Plan BTEP. According to the General 2026 International Monetary Fund World Economic Outlook Update, global economic growth is expected to remain subdued at 3.3% in 2026, unchanged from 2025. Reporting for Channel Africa in Gaborone, Botswana, this is Ashingira Madondo.
Anxious families and rescue teams in South Africa are waiting for news of 5 miners trapped underground at a diamond mine as efforts to retrieve them continues. The National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa, NUMSA, says that it's closely monitoring the recovery operation at Ekapa Minerals in Kimberley in the country's Northern Cape province. The incident comes at a difficult time for the company, which has now filed for liquidation, citing a prolonged global downturn in the diamond market has left it unable to meet its financial obligations. Mining operations have been halted, placing further pressure on workers and a region long dependent on diamond production. Karabo Sioko reports.
Workers camped outside Ikapa mine waiting for answers regarding their sudden dismissal. They say the liquidation came as a shock and that the mine did not prepare them of this decision. About 1,000 miners are left without jobs and without salaries. The miners say this left them stranded with their hands tied because they cannot boycott as it will hamper the retrieval efforts of their 5 trapped colleagues underground.
Didn't get paid. The only thing that they did on Monday, they gave us pay slips. Then we were hoping, okay, it's fine. When you get pay slip, which means you're going to get paid. So we didn't get paid. I'm broke. I don't have money. I have to pay rent. I have to buy groceries, pay school fees. Now everything is stopped. Debit orders are bouncing back.
We were not told earlier that this is going to happen. Find ourselves in this situation, of which now there's a meeting that currently taking place, whereby we only ask our payments so that we can get paid. We pay the rents, we pay the debtor. Currently, we can't express our feelings, and there's nothing that we can do since we have our colleagues down there underground. We can't even boycott, because immediately we boycott, then we stop everything. Then the rescue of those people underground, then it has to stop.
NUMSA met with the mine management, saying the retrieval of the trapped miners remain a priority. NUMSA Regional Leader Officer Tshepiso Mochabela says they also engaged the mine about the unpaid February salaries.
As with regards to the incident that happened on the 17th, which is still an ongoing process, the recoveries are not yet done, but the miners assured us that they are actually prioritizing such issues. It's priority number 1 according to what they've said. Hopefully in the next few days or hours, there will be a further communication to check what's happening, that it is a provisional liquidation that's going to be granted. If it can be granted on Tuesday, then after that we'll then have an opportunity, us as a union, to also respond to the documents that were filed in court.
On Sunday, NUMSA will have a mass meeting with its members to discuss a way forward, while Ikapa Mineral is also expected to file their liquidation in court next week Tuesday. I am Karabo Siyoko in Kimberley.
Still to come on Rise and Shine, South Africa's cabinet has joined President Cyril Ramaphosa in expressing gratitude to Russian President Vladimir Putin for facilitating the return of 17 South African men who were recruited to fight on the Russian front lines. That's in the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine. We spoke about that story resulting or involving some Kenyans as well who are over there. So that's a story that we'll be touching on just now.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Kiongozi wa chama kikuu cha upinzani nchini Tanzania Tundu Lissu anayekabiliwa na kesi ya uhaini anasema hajala chakula licha ya kesi inayomkabili awali kuahirishwa. Pengine haya malalamiko yana mashiko ya namna yoyote?
Kama yana mashiko ama hayana ni jambo tofauti, kwa sababu yeye muda uliotolewa mchana ni kwa ajili ya kwenda kula. Nakumbuka kwamba Lissu ni mahabusu, sio mfungwa. Japokuwa sijajua taratibu za magereza zinakuaje wanapokuwa na wafungwa na mahabusu, lakini mahabusu wanapelekwa chakula na ndugu zao kutoka nje.
Na kama tunavyofahamu kesi hii ikiwa inaendelea, imeelezwa kwamba itakuwa inaendelea kusikilizwa mfululizo ili kuweza kuendelea na kuweza kuimaliza kwa haraka. Yeye mwenyewe ndio ambaye anajitetea Tundu Lissu. Pengine wana namna ya wao kutaka kuleta hukumu ya haraka, au haya ni maelezo ya awali?
Hapana, ni kesi inaendelea na wanashikiliwa mashahidi. Kwa hiyo lazima itapelekwa haraka, kwa sababu pia limekuwa ni ombi la mshtakiwa mwenyewe anayejitetea Tundu Lissu.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live 5 days a week.
South Africa's cabinet has joined President Cyril Ramaphosa in expressing gratitude to Russian President Vladimir Putin for facilitating the return of 17 South African men who were recruited to fight on the Russian front lines in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The South African government, working closely with Russian authorities, secured the safe return of the men aged between 20 and 29. After distress calls were received from them seeking assistance to come home. Here's more from Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe.
15 young South African men who were allegedly deceived into joining Russian forces in Ukraine have returned home, marking a significant development in a case that has sparked mounting political controversy. The group arrived in Durban on Wednesday after being stranded in Ukraine's Donbas region since November. The return follows that of 4 others who made it back last week. Emotional scenes unfolded at Ushaka Airport as relatives welcomed the men home, with several family members breaking down upon seeing them disembark. The incident continues to generate political fallout amid allegations that the recruitment was linked to structures associated with former Presidents Jacob Zuma's MK Party. Briefing the media in Pretoria on Thursday following Wednesday's cabinet meeting, Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni confirmed that all 17 men have returned home in South Africa.
The South African government, working closely with the Russian government, has secured a safe return of the men between the ages of 20 to 39 years who were lured to join the Russian front lines. This followed receipt of distress calls for assistance to return home from 17 South African men. Cabinet joined President Ramaphosa in expressing gratitude to President Vladimir Putin, who responded positively to the call of President Ramaphosa to support the process of returning South African men who were lured into the battle lines between Russia and Ukraine.
Ntshavheni also confirmed that the men have been formally released from the contracts they had entered into with the military contractors while investigations to establish their circumstances are underway.
All 17 men have been released from their contract. The contract is signed with military contractors. 15 of the men are back in South Africa, whilst 2 remain in Russia, with 1 in hospital and the other 1 is being processed before finalizing his travel arrangements. Investigations are ongoing into the circumstances that led to the recruitment of these young men and the violation of South African laws.
South Africa's Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamola, outlined the diplomatic steps undertaken in coordination with Russian authorities that ultimately secured the men's safe return to South Africa.
We have been working with the families since we received the call of distress and since the President instructed us to support measures to return them back home. And we engaged with the Russian embassy in Pretoria, with my counterpart also in Russia, Mr. Lavrov, up until the President made a call on this very distressful situation affecting the young people who were in the front lines of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And up until there was a resolution of cooperation between President Ramaphosa and President Putin to return them back to South Africa.
Lamola added that government had also engaged the men's families in December last year to provide oversight, saying the engagements were fruitful with the matter in the hands of police.
We met the families on a virtual platform on the eve of Christmas to understand the issues and the circumstances. And we said, when we are ready, we will give them feedback. And they've been cooperating with our ambassadors and missions in terms of the information that leads to all the young people end up coming back to South Africa. So their return necessitates an engagement with the families that they have now returned. And obviously there will be challenges that will arise with them coming from a war zone. The issues that also relate to the police taking the matter forward in terms of investigating the circumstances of their traveling to the front line of the war zone. So all these issues do necessitate an engagement, and we believe the engagement was very productive.
At the backdrop, Lamola urged South Africans to verify overseas job offers and travel arrangements with official missions to avoid being misled or drawn into dangerous situations abroad.
Yeah, obviously the key issue also for the family is the fact that communities will not know what happens outside the country, that the department and South African society may need to know that when you go outside South Africa, particularly on job opportunities and other activities related to employment or even tourism, you always have to verify all this information with our missions, with the South African government, so that you do not find yourself being duped or lured into circumstances and conditions that are not of your making.
He noted that the government has to repatriate distressed citizens and urged South Africans to exercise extreme caution and verify the legality of overseas recruitment offers.
As you are aware, the South African government, we always find ourselves having to repatriate South Africans in various distressed countries or provide support for their return throughout the year. So we want to really send a message to South Africans that they really need to act with extreme caution when dealing with the recruitment to outside the country, in verification, in ensuring that the information is in line with the legal and non-dubious means of recruitment.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
7:56 is your time. Let's go to the DRC now, where authorities in the east of the country say that at least 171 bodies have been discovered in 2 mass graves near the border town of Uvira following recent clashes involving the M23 rebel group. The grim discovery comes as fighting continues despite ceasefire efforts, raising fresh concerns about civilian protection in a region already facing one of Africa's worst humanitarian crises. Tensions have also escalated after the reported killing of an M23 spokesperson, casting further doubt on peace efforts. Former Kenyan President and regional peace envoy Uhuru Kenyatta has again called for dialogue to prevent further bloodshed.
Well, there is an effort that is being made. The African Union is strongly involved in that effort. SADC and the East African community were involved in this Africa. There is now a mediation led by Benin in this respect. There was a U.S. intervention that led to an agreement between Rwanda and the DRC. There are the Doha negotiations between and the agreements already established between the DRC and the M23. But the truth is that the parties that seem to sign agreements in a relatively easy way are maintaining a very belligerent attitude on the ground, and this is totally unacceptable. I mean, we must create the conditions for these agreements that are being established to be implemented, to have a real ceasefire, and that real ceasefire to allow for a political solution that will allow to respect the integrity of the territorial integrity of the DRC, the unity of the DRC, but at the same time that addresses old problems, old root causes of this conflict that need to be effectively addressed and solved.
That was Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, speaking about tensions in the DRC. Okay. 7:58 is your time, Central African time, in case you're watching and wondering, because people do watch the time, don't they? Especially when they're going to work in the morning. Asanda, isn't that correct? Mm-hmm. All right. So, today in history, March the 2nd, independence of Morocco. It's Morocco's Independence Day. Officially recognized the independence of Morocco, ending the French protectorate that had been in place since 1912. Sultan Mohammed V, who had returned from exile just months earlier, became the king of an independent Morocco. And this marks a major victory for North African decolonization and sets the stage for the end of Spanish protectorate in the northern part of the country shortly after. So, félicitations to the people of Morocco as you celebrate your Independence Day today. And our thoughts are with you.
Right, we enter now the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. Thank you for staying with us up until this point. We continue bringing you news and current affairs from the African perspective. We are Channel Africa, coming to you live from Johannesburg, South Africa. That's where our studios are, the team of Asanda Bheda and Peter Ndoro. Let's start you off with our news at 8 o'clock Central African time. Good morning, Jalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Loud explosions have been reported in the Lebanese capital Beirut as the Israeli military begins hitting targets belonging to Hezbollah. This comes after Hezbollah said it fired rockets and drones in Israel in response to the killing of Iran's supreme leader. The BBC's Joe Floto has the story.
The chief of staff here in Israel has said that Hezbollah has opened a new front against Israel. So the IDF are taking this as an opportunity to attack a wide range of targets. We're hearing from Lebanon that the south of the country has received a number of airstrikes, and inside Beirut, probably more than a dozen targets have been struck, and the IDF saying that they have killed what they describe as senior terrorists this morning.
The Iranian embassy in South Africa has committed to work together with the Department of International Relations to assist South Africans in Iran. This follows violent attacks by the US and Israel on Iran and the killing of the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, over the weekend. Iran's ambassador to South Africa, Saeed Mustafa Daryabari, says Tehran will continue with the legacy of al-Khamenei for fighting for the country. He added that they are concerned about South Africans stuck in Iran.
In the midst of this turmoil, we are deeply concerned about South Africans' citizens who have found themselves in the unfortunate position of being caught between these forces. Their safety is a priority, and we are in direct communication with the officials in Iran to ensure their safe and swift return.
Moving on to other news, 6 people have been killed in a helicopter crash in western Kenya, including a member of parliament. Police and government officials say the helicopter crashed in Nandi County in the North Rift region on Saturday. The cause was not immediately clear. County Police Commander Samuel Mukusi told Kenyan television station Citizen TV that the MP, the pilot and 4 other people had died. President William Ruto identified the lawmaker as Johanna Ngeno of Emurua Dikiri constituency in a post on X. A Panama-flagged cargo vessel, the Dura Bulk, has sunk off the coast of Western Sahara. Morocco's transport ministry says the ship, which was carrying a cargo of clinker, a key ingredient in cement production, went down on Saturday after reporting water ingress en route the Lyon port in Western Sahara. All crew have been rescued and authorities have opened an investigation into the incident. And finally, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities has called for calm while further investigations continue into endocrine disrupting chemicals associated with potential hormonal interference were found by researchers from the University of the Free State in various sanitary pads and panty liners in South Africa. The department spokesperson Cassius Silala says the public will be informed as further verified information becomes available. He says they are engaging with the University of the Free State to assess current regulatory frameworks that govern menstrual health products. Silala says the purpose of the scientific research conducted is not to create fear and panic, but to inform and empower consumers, policymakers and health professionals.
The department views menstrual health and sanitary dignity as a critical component of gender equality and public health. In addition, the department welcomes the call made by the National Consumer Commission to initiate an investigation and a regulatory review process that will assist in ensuring that menstrual health products are safe, affordable and accessible.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African perspective.
In our sports headline, Impi Fesser to lead the Blitzboks in North America. And Namibia's brave gladiators made history by winning the COSAFA Women's Championship. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Bheda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
A very good morning to you and welcome to the third and final hour of Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg in South Africa on the internet. channelafrica.co.za is where you can find us, and also on your mobile apps. So look into your app store, look for SABC Plus, and then look for Channel Africa, and of course focus on your attention in the morning on Rise and Shine, the best way to start your day with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Bheda. A very good morning, Asanda.
Good morning. Yes, how are you?
Fabulous to fantastic, thank you.
Okay, great. So what are we looking at this hour? We go back to the Middle East after U.S. and Israeli strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And we get more analysis on that. We'll be speaking in this hour to senior fellow at the Montreal Institute for Global Security to examine the international implications and ramifications of these strikes and the broader risks for global stability.
And a little bit later on, we're going to be taking a look at something called reskilling. In the world that we're living in today, it's very important that we develop new skills, different types of skills. And there's an organization called Wamandla Foundation looking at reskilling women and young girls in terms of new pathways. We'll be taking a look at that a little bit later on as well.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
The Middle East is on edge after U.S. and Israeli strikes killed Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei. It triggered retaliatory missile attacks, emergency UN meetings and protests across several countries. World leaders are divided, while civilians across the region brace for further escalation. Bonolo Maribe has more.
The Iranian government has confirmed the death of Ali Khamenei, killed in what U.S. President Donald Trump described as major combat operations carried out alongside Israel. The strikes mark one of the most significant military escalations in the region in decades, in which Iran has called the attack illegal and unprovoked. Within hours, Iran launched retaliatory missile barrages towards Israel and the Gulf states, hosting U.S. bases, with interceptors lighting up the skies over Haifa and Jerusalem overnight. In Tel Aviv, a residential neighborhood was struck, with Israel's opposition leader Yair Lapid defending continued operations, calling the strikes necessary for Israel's security.
What we're going to do is to keep on doing what we're doing in Iran in order to make sure that Israel is safe. And it is extremely important for the people to obey orders coming from Israeli headquarters in order to avoid the loss of life. We're sorry about all those who are wounded. This is the price of a just war.
However, residents described fear and exhaustion after repeated nights in shelters.
Tired, stressed, feel like we're very over it. It's hard to continue to do this again after the last round. Hard to convince the kids that we need to go down to the shelter, go into the stairwell, get out of bed. I want this to end as soon as possible.
In Tehran, thousands gathered in Halab Square, mourning the death of the Iranian leader. Some demanded revenge as tensions deepen. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bakir Ghalibaf, warned of harsh consequences.
We have prepared ourselves for these moments, and we have planned for all scenarios. And you will see that with the formation of a leadership council, an unimaginable power and cohesion will take shape among the officials, within the defense forces, and among the people. Do not doubt that our defense forces have so far used only a portion of their capabilities, and we will still settle our account with the Americans and the Israelis.
At an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, Iran invoked its right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Israel insisted that the strikes were preemptive and necessary to prevent a nuclear threat. China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Kong, called for an immediate halt to military action, warning that escalation risks engulfing the wider region.
Military force is not the right way to resolve international disputes, but only intensify hatred and conflict. The escalation and spillover of the situation in the Middle East are not in the interest of any party. Dialogue and negotiations are the only way to resolve conflicts and disputes.
Japan's Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi said Iran must cease actions destabilizing the region, while Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese backed the US strikes, saying Khamenei's passing would not be mourned.
Australia stands with the brave people of Iran in their struggle against what is an oppressive regime. Ayatollah Khamenei was responsible for the regime's ballistic missile and nuclear program, support for armed proxies, and its brutal acts of violence and intimidation against its own people.
The conflict has already ignited reactions around the world. Major airports in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha were shut. Passengers were stranded across Australia as flights were cancelled. In New York's Times Square, hundreds protested the strikes. Some condemned the military action, drawing comparisons to Iraq. Others voiced support for a hardline stance against Tehran.
I feel the shame of what we're doing around the world. We need a regime change here in this country.
I'm an American citizen, and Iran does not want any American citizens alive. They want to kill Israel. I'm a Jewish person, and for me, it's threatening to have Iran. If they ever get a nuclear bomb, as a Jew and American, we're screwed.
As missiles continue to fly and diplomatic pressure intensifies, the risk of broader regional conflict remains high. World leaders are urging restraints, but on the ground, civilians from Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Dubai to New York, are already living the consequences. Bunolo Maribe, SABC News.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then after that, we will bring you more on this story.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Stay tuned to Channel Africa. Stream us on our new and updated website, channelafrica.co.za.
The recent airstrikes by Israel and the United States on Tehran beginning Saturday and followed by Iranian retaliation have sparked alarm far beyond the Middle East. Global shipping routes, oil and gas supplies and international security frameworks are all under pressure as tensions continue to rise. We are joined now by Dr. Terence McNamee, a senior fellow at the Montreal Institute for Global Security, to examine the international ramifications of these strikes and the broader risks for global stability. Dr. McNamee, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
These latest Israeli and U.S. strikes on Tehran began on Saturday with the killing of Iran's supreme leader. What does this mean then for global security?
Well, we're really in the fog of war at the moment. Almost anything seems possible. This was very much a war of choice. This was not a war of survival. There was no imminent threat that the country was about to cross the nuclear weapons threshold. The timing and the interests of both the United States and Israel came together. And so we have a situation where the American government plus the Israelis are trying to effect regime change through air power alone. And this has really never been done before. And so I think at the moment, other than Israel, which has wanted to see the back of the regime and was looking for a pretext for decades, there doesn't seem to be much of a strategy in terms of the United States. I think that they obviously want to see the back of the mullahs, but what comes next is really an open question. And I think that we are, everything is very unclear at the moment. And Iran's retaliation against the Gulf states, while it's not entirely unpredictable, I think it has caught people off guard. So we're very much in what's called the fog of war at the moment.
Would you say these strikes were preemptive as you see it?
No. As I said, this was very much a war of choice. Negotiations were ongoing in Oman, and according to some people, were making some degree of progress. But it was clear in retrospect that those negotiations were something of a sham. Now, the calculation in Washington, D.C. is that whatever emerges after the Shia regime disappears will be better. But that is also unclear because we don't know exactly how strong the military is. Will the Revolutionary Guard be able to create some kind of military government, or will there be some sort of elite pact between the clerics, the military, and other constituencies, or will Iran descend into civil war? We simply don't know. And I think the next 24, 48 hours are going to be crucial. And it was very relevant that some American soldiers' lives have already been lost because this was an operation that had not even a figment of formal congressional approval. And that will increasingly come into play if more American soldiers die. And as yet, it's very unclear even how those soldiers were killed. And I think in terms of the Gulf states, this is really alarming in the sense that the Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Bahrain and Qatar, they've always been regarded as kind of these enclaves, these kind of oases of ultra wealthy enclaves. However, if these attacks continue, these retaliatory attacks by Iran, that whole perception of that region is going to change. So again, everything at the moment is unclear. And I think that the United States only has a limited amount of time for there to be meaningful change on the ground in Tehran before some very serious questions are going to be asked in Washington about this operation.
So on that point then, how much of an influence do you see President Donald Trump as having on these operations, and how might the world then in turn view the operations if he's deemed to have a big influence on them?
Well, in your piece before the commercial, I think you got a hint of just how divided opinion is around the world. Now, remember, in the last 16, 17 years, there have been a number of occasions where the Iranian citizens have risen up, and it looked like perhaps the days of the Shia regime were numbered, but they were unsuccessful. And so there's one argument that President Trump and the Israelis are kind of just pushing them over the edge, giving that nudge. So what will emerge is some sort of mass movement that might approach something like democracy. And what we find around the world is the United States' traditional allies, let's just call it for argument's sake, the West. Most countries have wanted to see the back of the Iranian regime for a long time, but they're very concerned, of course, about what's happening in terms of engagement, in terms of international law. There's obviously bad precedents being set because this is not a situation like Afghanistan in 2001 or even Iraq in 2003, where in both cases there was something of a coalition that was established before military action was undertaken. In this particular case, I don't even know how much advance warning countries like the UK or France or or Canada were given before this operation occurred. So there's a lot of concerns about the precedent that is being set, but I think it's clearly the case that President Trump has quite an appetite for geopolitical risk, kind of appetite that wasn't evident in Trump 1.0. So it's a very tricky situation at the moment. Then, of course, there's lots of countries that are at the moment kind of keeping their powder dry, like Russia. But obviously, Russia is a big ally of Iran, and Iran is an important country for them in terms of kind of the anti-Western alignment. And so this would obviously result in a further weakening of Russia's position if the Shia regime was to fall. So there's all kinds of calculations that that countries are making around the world.
On that point of Russia, how likely is China then to get involved, and whether they would get directly or indirectly involved? In what way could they?
Well, I think China will, as it has done for the last few years, I think China will create the impression of, the real adult in the room, the country that is affirming the importance of international law, affirming the importance of international stability, and will be pushing for some sort of quick negotiations to end the conflict. And I think sort of that's China's main role. I think in terms of Russia, again, how this affects the conflict in Ukraine is an interesting question, particularly in terms of internally, in terms of Russia. We have seen that there's been a tremendous amount of internal unrest in Iran that resulted in a huge crackdown. Perhaps tens of thousands of Iranians have been killed. And Russia may take note of that and think that maybe it has to crack down much more internally so it doesn't face those kind of threats that occurred in Iran. So I think there's so many different moving pieces here. And I think, things are obviously going to change as well as the nature of the conflict evolves. I mean, I don't anticipate we're going to see combat troops go on the ground, either U.S. or Israeli. But if these airstrikes do not have the intended effect pretty soon, then one wonders what the next step will be.
What are the risks that Iran's retaliation might pose? They responded with missile and drone attacks. What risk could this pose on international peace and major global powers?
Well, I think the main concern again is that there does not seem to be any impetus on behalf of the U.S. administration to create that kind of collaboration, coalition, cooperation to convince even its allies in terms of the correctness of a certain path. It seems like unilateralism is the order of the day. And I think that's obviously very concerning for even countries like Denmark. It must be looking at its situation over Greenland and wondering, well, if the United States administration can make decisions so quickly and so on the hoof, will there be circumstances that come together where they think, well, maybe we should take unilateral action over Greenland? So I think, it's tremendously concerning what's going on. And again, if we return to Iran, we can't ignore the fact that this has been an absolutely brutal and disruptive regime, really since 1979, since 1980. And the Iranian people, at least a big chunk of it, as we've seen on the streets, are very, very desperate to be rid of the kind of iron fist of the regime. But again, how you go about affecting change, again, the precedent of kind of this sort of quick, swift regime change is not one that is welcomed really in any corners.
Let's look at the economic impact now beyond the Middle East. We know shipping, energy and air travel have been disrupted. So to what extent then will there be an impact economically far beyond the Middle East?
Well, in terms of the oil price, this was really baked in. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think it's increased by about $10 per barrel. And again, it all has to do with how quickly this comes to an end. If we're looking at a prolonged crisis, then we could be looking at the biggest oil shock in years. And so there's obviously I think about 25% of the world's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And if that is disrupted, and if, for instance, this conflagration becomes more regional and it brings in countries like Iraq, which is obviously a significant oil player as well, and it has a very significant Shia population that is sympathetic or even aligned to the regime in Tehran. So if we look at disruption in places like Iraq, Iran, and then through the Gulf states, then we're looking at something very, very serious. And I think in terms of global trade and in terms of what we've seen with these attacks in Dubai and Abu Dhabi and the disruption of air travel, again, I think that if this is a short war, as it were, then I think maybe those enclaves of kind of stability in the Gulf will recover quickly and can probably characterize this as something of a blip. But if it continues and these attacks continues, and particularly if more people die in the Gulf, then it may change the perception of these places for not just a few weeks, but even years. And that will obviously have a tremendous impact given how significant those places are now in the global economy. So I think the potential, if this drags on, is very significant, both in terms of trade, in terms of oil supply, and in terms of that region.
And if that potential is indeed a reality that this drags on, then how might global institutions like the UN or international security alliances act to prevent the spread of such?
Well, it's going to be very difficult because, if we think back to 2001 and 2003, and if we think back Afghanistan and Iraq, which I think in historical terms, those operations are considered fairly calamitous and not have the intended effect. Those operations still very much went through the UN process, a very sort of collaborative, an attempt to build alliances for collective action. In the case of Iraq in 2003, the United States tried for months. Ultimately, it was unsuccessful and it didn't get UN approval. But now this is completely bypassed. When we look at the operation in Venezuela, when we look at what's happened in Iran, this is very much unilateral decision making. And of course, the concern is that if the United States, which was once considered the country that sort of underwrote the international rules-based order, if it's doing that, then of course what's to prevent other major powers from acting unilaterally? And so I think this is it's gravely concerning, and I think the United States, in terms of Congress, this is really one to watch. There will obviously be a very concerted effort by the Democrats, and maybe even some Republicans who remember, Donald Trump was elected as, the peacemaker. He was not going to get the United States into foreign entanglements. And I think this is even concerned with part of his MAGA base. I mean, they don't want American soldiers to be dying in Iran. So I think that Washington, D.C. and what happens over the next few days is also very important to watch. But I think at the moment, international bodies like the UN are completely sidelined.
Dr. McNamee, thank you so much again for your time. We'll leave that chat there for now. We appreciate your valuable analysis.
Pleasure.
Dr. Terence McNamee is Senior Fellow at the Montreal Institute for Global Security, lending his voice in terms of that recent airstrikes by Israel and the United States on Tehran. It began on Saturday, continued on Sunday with Iranian retaliation. He was helping us to unpack the international ramifications of these strikes. It's now 8:30 Central African Time. Let's get our news headlines from Jwalane Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Africa for Palestine has condemned the US-Israeli attack on Iran, which resulted in the death of Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. A Panama-flagged cargo vessel, the Durabalk, has sunk off the coast of Western Sahara. And finally, the government in Britain is beginning a 3-month-long consultation today into what access, if any, people aged under 16 should have to online social media and other platforms. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And it's time now to catch you up with what's happening in the world of sport. He may not have a report on it, but he and I are Manchester United fans, and we are just elated, aren't we? Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Morning, Peter. We sure are, but we don't mind what's happening on the other side. Our problems are our problems. Beginning with rugby news this hour. Springbok Sevens veteran Impie Visser will return to captain the Blitzboks for the North American leg of the HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series, approaching its 50th tournament in the series. The squad is set to compete in back-to-back tournaments, first in Vancouver on the 7th and the 8th of March, followed by New York on the 14th and the 15th of March. Blitzbok head coach Philip Snyman made 6 changes to the squad that claimed victory in Perth earlier this month. Visser will be joined by an experienced playmaking trio as Selvin Davids, Ronald Brown and Devald Human return from injury. Davids and Brown have recovered from injuries sustained in Cape Town in December, while Human is making his first appearance of the season. Gino Cupido is also back after a late withdrawal from the Singapore and Perth leagues. Now, football news. Namibia have been crowned champions of the 2025 COSAFA Championship. Namibia had to come from behind to beat host Banyana 2-1 in extra time. It took 36 minutes for Ntabiseng Magia to put Banyana in the lead after a defensive blunder by Namibia. But Mudinajo Hanavi scored a brilliant goal for Namibia 9 minutes into the second half. Then Namibia took the lead early in extra time through Memoringoda. The goal was enough to lead Namibia to the first COSAFA crown. In cricket news, South Africa have secured top spot in Group 1 in the Super 8 of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup in India and Sri Lanka. They recorded a comfortable 5-wicket victory over Zimbabwe in their last match in Delhi. The Proteas, who were already guaranteed a place in the semi-final match, remain the only unbeaten team in the tournament. While the Proteas had never won a limited overs World Cup title, coach Shukri Conrad feels they are ready for battle in the knockout stages.
I still feel that in the field maybe we can create a bit more opportunities. Our catching has let us down a little bit, but yeah, I don't want to be ultra critical now. We're playing some really good cricket, and as has been the last couple of weeks, we'll double down on what we've done in the last couple of weeks and do that again over the next couple of days. So again, fly out tomorrow, rest up well, and then see how the guys pull up, who needs what in their games, and then we crack on.
Finally, golf news. Charles Barnard etched his name onto the storied Freddie Tate Cup trophy as leading amateur at the Investec South African Open, while another former amateur winner, Casey Jarvis, cruised a 3-stroke victory in the world's second oldest national open at Stellenbosch Golf Club. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Coming up, we'll take a look at a Womandla Foundation initiative, and this is a Reskilling Revolution Africa Phase 2 in South Africa program, and it's to help women and young people move beyond basic skills training and get into real job opportunities. So we'll find out more about what kind of economic opportunities that these kind of training can help in connecting learning directly with those opportunities. Stay tuned. We get our economics news now first, though. Here is Tabiso Lehoko with that update.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, and good morning. A TTI group says South Africa's youth unemployment crisis stems from a persistent skills gap despite millions spent on training. It is targeting future-focused skills, funding over 7,000 students nationally and preparing them for the workplace through CV training, mentorship and work readiness programs. According to the group, graduates must be equipped for real job demands, especially in STEM and emerging fields like AI and cybersecurity. The group's chief executive officer, TJ Malamulele.
So in the first division, we fund students, we take them to university. We have over 7,000 students throughout the country in all universities and TVET colleges. But what we do differently from other companies is that final years of the students in school, we help them with what we do, psychosocial support and work readiness program. So we get these students to be ready for the workplace.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says that they will continue to monitor the retrieval process of 5 trapped men at the Ikapa mineral shaft this amidst a looming liquidation process. In a statement, the mine says that the decision to liquidate followed careful assessment and that it cannot continue to meet its financial obligations given the prolonged global diamond market downturn exacerbated by the recent tragic incident. The mine has since halted all mining activities at Ikapa in Kimberley in the Northern Cape province. Karabo Suyoko has more.
Workers camped outside Ikapa mine waiting for answers regarding their sudden dismissal. They say the liquidation came as a shock and that the mine did not prepare them of this decision.
South Africa's Limpopo Provincial Economic Development, Environment and Tourism Department says it's revitalizing some of its nature reserves to attract domestic and international tourists. The department, however, acknowledges that some of its nature reserves are no longer operational since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Department spokesperson Zaid Kala says they will implement recovery strategies.
Limpopo has effortlessly managed to bounce back from the hard lockdown experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected the tourism sector for almost a 3-year-long period, whereby the tourism sector at some stage experienced a total shutdown.
The governor of the Bank of Botswana, Lesego Moseki, says that the economy is expected to continue to operate below full capacity in the short to medium term. This after the Monetary Policy Committee unanimously maintained the country's main interest rate at 3.5% for the second time in a row. Addressing the media following the MPC meeting in Gaborone, Moseki said subdued demand had driven inflationary pressures.
The increase in inflation was attributable to a higher rate of price increases for food and health services. The Monetary Policy Committee forecast inflation to increase into the medium term.
At least 2 oil tankers are known to have been struck by unknown projectiles in Omani waters close to the Strait of Hormuz. This is a key strategic entrance to the Gulf through which about 1/5 of the world's oil passes. The BBC's Asesha Slitcher has the details.
At least 150 tankers have dropped anchor in open Gulf waters beyond the Strait of Hormuz. Dozens more are stationary on the other side. Some 20% of global oil from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iraq, Kuwait and Iran passes through Hormuz, along with large volumes of liquefied natural gas from Qatar. Maersk, the world's biggest container shipping company, says it's suspending all vessel crossings through the strait until further notice for safety considerations.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 361. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 21. In Kenya, 128 shillings 645. In Zambia, 18 kwacha 83. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there, 5 rand 12. Russia, 77 rubles 280. India, 91 rupees 5. China, 61.86. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 15 rand 92 cents. 74 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Gold is trading at $5,342, while platinum is at $2,365 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $76.17 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, across Africa, millions of young people enter the job market every year. Some of them let me start again, sorry. Across the continent, young people are entering the job market every year and some form of training. And South Africa alone, youth unemployment remains among the highest in the world, with women disproportionately affected. Now, the Womandla Foundation, in partnership with the International Association for Volunteer Effort and IBM Skills Build, has launched Phase 2 of the Reskilling Revolution Africa. And that's an initiative designed not just to train, but to also connect women and young people directly to real economic opportunities in a fast-changing digital economy. Well, joining us now is Sam Omo, who's the founder of the Womandla Foundation. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Good morning and thank you, Peter and Asanda.
South Africa, like many African countries, doesn't have a shortage of training programs as such, yet unemployment remains stubbornly high. What's fundamentally broken in terms of skills to jobs pipeline, in your view?
Well, Peter, I think it's the actual availability of jobs in South Africa. So as much as we have 8 million people or youth seeking employment, there just isn't job opportunities available, or the speed at which the jobs are created are just not there to actually absorb that amount of people looking for work.
So what have you been able to do in terms of intervention in this regard?
Well, I think with this initiative and program, we don't just stop at skills development or training, but we are actually creating employment pathways. And for the most part, employment pathways have always been limited into that country, but with Reskilling Revolution Africa, the point of it is to make sure that these pathways can also be global. So we can have all the local talent stay in the country, build our economy, but also look for work or receive work on a more global platform and channel. So those are the partnerships that an ecosystem that we are continuously building so that our participants can go from finishing a learning pathway to finding different ways or means to global pathways, but still remaining in South Africa.
What have you found from phase one? What has it taught you?
So Womandla Foundation actually has been employed for phase two and not necessarily the phase one. Phase one was in other countries, Nigeria, Kenya, and we are part of the implementation for phase two, which includes Ethiopia and South Africa. And so for the very first time, we have a goal for 15,000 women and youth to go through these learning pathways. And we want to be able to say that a great majority of them are now exposed to gig economy, to entrepreneurship avenues, and to other opportunities at work or even promotions at their current works.
Digital and tech skills are often highlighted as the future, but many young people struggle with barriers just like, as simple as connectivity, devices themselves, and even mentorship. How are you able to address these structural challenges?
Right, Peter. So I think this is where the difference is with the Womandla Foundation, is that it's not just the skills training. There are learning success managers, regional coordinators, and that's where the mentorship part is strongly exercised. So as much as participants have autonomy in the subjects that they choose, which is something else that is great about this program, is that we're not telling them what to do. We are offering various pathways and we're leading them along the direction they wish to go, and then we are supporting them through mentorship and then partnership and ecosystem partner work opportunities afterwards. So it's just the linkage. We are not offering the jobs, but really the linkages and opportunities. The partners also include those who will provide data. So we're quite excited about that. We had thought about that. So for the more rural environments and some who have poor connectivity, we have partners with infrastructure and computers who will then allow the participants to go and complete their courses. But otherwise, we are also partnering with a fiber company.
Tell me a little bit about the challenges that women, young girls face in particular that you're addressing in this area.
Right. So our actual goal are the needs. So not in employment, not in education, and not in training. So that is the main focus of this program, but it's still open to women and youth. And the problem that the needs face particularly is absolute exclusion from any kind of economic participation. And so us finding them, first of all, and also recruiting them, onboarding them, and then training them also for holistic support is something that we found very, very necessary and something that Womandla Foundation has always done. So that is confidence building, communication skills that we've also teach before entering the job market, and also then stretching their capacity and capabilities in the tech and the future of work opportunities. So I think this is where the difference is. And also there are many social challenges and social ills that women face, gender-based violence being one of them that comes right on top for South Africa, down to taking more responsibility around home and work. We know these social ills that really hinder women and girls to entering or doing what they wish to do for their futures and reaching their destiny. So I think Womandla naturally has other programs that also support this Reskilling Revolution Africa program. And I think holistic support is the one way that is super important for us to make sure that there is greater success, particularly in the needs, but also in our community wide.
We've run out of time, but briefly, if you can, what message do you have to the private sector and also governments in terms of what they can do and what they need to do differently?
Well, first of all, we need to cut some of that red tape. We need to actually question why it is there in terms of funding, the restrictions that they might have, particularly for nonprofit sectors, and also look at what we are offering as a valuable part of support for ESG, for CSI, and for economic emancipation in our country. The country needs to have a vision that we are all going to as what is South Africa's dream, and that should be important and leading the decision making.
Sam, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. And also, we wish you well and strength with the great work that you and your team are doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's Sam Omo, who's the founder of Wamandla Foundation, talking to us about the important work of reskilling women and young girls, particularly in the age that we're living in, and they seem to be being left behind. And they're doing their bit to make sure that gaps are closed and that they're also picked up and made sure that they're taken along.
Stella Longwe pamalonje
ndiyetu apa tindikatswiri oyimba wa dziko la Mozambique ameneyu amene ali Rikabana ndatiuzeni kuti mayimba chamba chanji komanso dzina lanu lenileni kuoneka ngati dzina limeneli ndilijatu atapa stage dzina lanu kwenikweni ndi ndani komanso mayimba chamba chanji
ineyo dzina langa lenileni ndine Ricardo Musa Rabana chamba chimene ndimayimba ine ndi manganji ndimakonda kwambiri ma tradition zimenezo ndi nyimbo zathu chifukwa kwathu kunoko tili ndi madansi osiyanasiyana a chimizi ndi ineyo poti ndi mnyamata wa chimizi ndi ndimakondanso nyimbo za chimizi
ndinu a chimizi ndi makondanso nyimbo za chimizi mapanganso za chimizi ayi zosangalatsa kuti mwanena poyera kuti ndinu a chimizi anthu amazibisa anthu amafuna kukhala ndithu achitauni koma chikhalidwe chilibe chitauni alisa ndi chikhalidwe chake alisa ndi zimene amakonda
malonje pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo ndi Stella Longwe.
The safety and well-being of learners is a shared social responsibility. Parents and guardians play a critical role in ensuring safe, reliable, and lawful scholar transport. Parents are therefore urged to take responsibility for the following. Learners should be encouraged to report unsafe driving, overcrowding, or any dangerous practices both before and during the journey. Promoting safe boarding, respectful conduct, and responsible behavior during the journey is a collective duty that begins at home. By working together, parents, operators, and authorities can protect learners and build a culture of safety on our roads. Issued by the National Department of Transport.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Bheda on Channel Africa.
Uganda has published the results of its full chimpanzee census in Bwindi Impenetrable National Park. This is a forest better known for its mountain gorillas. Officials say the findings are an important milestone for conservation and signal a new chapter for the park. Here's Michael Baleke reporting from Kampala with more.
Deep in the mist-covered hills of southwestern Uganda, scientists now have a clearer picture of life inside one of Africa's most celebrated rainforests. For the first time, a team of scientists has completed a full count of chimpanzees in Bwindi Impenetrable National Park, confirming that 426 of the endangered primates call the forest home. Long associated with mountain gorillas, the forest is now confirmed as an important habitat for chimpanzees as well. James Musinguzi, the executive director of Uganda Wildlife Authority, says the findings will help guide future conservation planning.
The data will inform protected area management decisions, guide conservation investments, and support the integration of chimpanzees into long-term conservation and monitoring frameworks alongside other flagship species.
The survey was led by the Uganda Wildlife Authority in partnership with the Jane Goulder Institute, using digital mapping tools to track chimpanzees' distribution across the forest. Uganda Wildlife Authority's James Musinguzi says the census could also expand Uganda's great ape tourism offerings.
To us, we look at this as an opportunity to be able to introduce another tourism product in one ecosystem that should be able to have ripple effects, both in terms of generating revenue to protect the ecosystem, but also to support the communities. So yes, there will be an opportunity to habituate some of these chimpanzees for purposes of diversifying our tourism product.
For many years, Bwendi has been defined by its gorillas. Now, chimpanzees are set to play a stronger role in the park's long-term conservation strategy. Michael Baleke, SABC News, Kampala.
Me again. South Africa's political parties have reacted differently to the US and Israeli strikes on Iran, sparking renewed debate over foreign policy, international law and global security. Some parties have condemned the attacks as unlawful aggression, while others have highlighted Iran's own actions on the international stage. Mkokeli Bandla reports.
The Al-Jama party has taken a firm stance against the attacks, framing them within both religious and humanitarian concerns. Party leader Khani Fendrick.
Al-Jama supports the position of the Secretary General of the United Nations and the government of South Africa, in the words of our President Cyril Ramaphosa, that the respect for international law and diplomacy must trump war. The actions of America and Israel is a blot on Americans. The world can never be led by America.
The Democratic Alliance criticized Iran's track record as Ryan Smith speaks for DA on international relations and cooperation.
The Islamic Republic of Iran is a rogue state which has repeatedly defied international law, violated nuclear treaties, and funded proxy organizations which have divided and destabilized societies around the world. The current theocratic dictatorship in Iran is also responsible for the most brutal massacre of innocent civilians in recent history. These countries are the single biggest threats to the international rules-based order and liberal democracies such as our own.
The United Democratic Movement also condemned the attacks, calling them a dangerous escalation. Party MP Ngabayom Zikwankwa explained.
We unequivocally denounce this brutal killing in cold blood, which constitutes a grave violation of international law, state sovereignty, and the fundamental principles of human dignity. This act represents a dangerous escalation of tensions in the Middle East and underscores a continued disregard for established international laws.
Religious leaders also weighed in, with the Anglican Church calling for urgent global prayer and restraint. Anglican Church Archbishop Thabo Makgoba.
I call upon the global church to join us in urgent unceasing prayer. We implore God to protect the innocent, the mothers, the children, and the elderly who are caught in the crossfire of this Operation Epic Fury and the subsequent crushing responses. We pray specifically for a sound mind for the leaders of the United States, Israel, and Iran, that they might recognize the futility of this bloodshed and turn back from the precipice of a global catastrophe.
Right, and that's how we start to wrap things up on the program. Just a reminder that today is Independence Day for people in Morocco. So happy Independence Day to you. Ending French protectorate status that had been in place since 1912. So 1956, Morocco became independent, and Spanish-French influence continues to this day in that part of the world. So happy Independence Day, félicitations to the people of Morocco.
Happy Monday. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 till 9. So stay tuned for the rest of the programming on Channel Africa from the African perspective. On the Move comes to you after Rise and Shine. I'm Asanda Bheda.
And me, I'm Peter Ndoro. Have an awesome day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye. The news is next with Jolani Tulong Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
top stories. The Sawa Africa for Palestine condemns the US-Israeli attack on Iran, and a cargo vessel sinks off the coast of Western Sahara. Good morning. Africa for Palestine has condemned the US-Israeli attack on Iran, which resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The group slammed the attack as an act of aggression. Ali Gomabe is Africa for Palestine communications manager.
Firstly, our deepest condolences to the millions of Iranians who are in the streets mourning the brutal killing of the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran. It's regrettable, it's unfortunate, and we stand in solidarity with them in these difficult times.
Meanwhile, the Israeli military says it dealt a severe blow to Iran's command and control centres in yesterday's strikes. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, announced that the UK would now allow its bases to be used for defensive strikes. The BBC's Rob Watson has the details.
I guess the British government would say that this was an evolution in policy rather than a screeching U-turn, as some will describe it, and will argue, as Sir Keir Starmer has done in a video, that essentially it's responding to events on the ground, and in particular what he called a scorched earth policy by the Iranian regime, and that, in other words, that missile attacks in the region threaten British civilians, he said, but also threatens UK allies, UK interests, and therefore, in what he called an act of collective self-defence, the US would be allowed to use UK bases.
A Panama-flagged cargo vessel, the Dirabulk, has sunk off the coast of Western Sahara. Morocco's Transport Ministry says the ship, which was carrying a cargo of clinker, a key ingredient in cement production, went down on Saturday after reopening water ingress en route to Layones port in Western Sahara. All crew have been rescued and authorities have opened an investigation into the incident. One person has been presumed dead and 5 crew members reported missing after a tugboat sank off South Africa's southern coast yesterday. South African Search and Rescue said in a statement the tug vessel Leo transmitted a distress message on Saturday, reporting uncontrolled water ingress and requesting immediate assistance. The ship sank in the early hours, approximately 80 nautical miles south of Mossel Bay in South Africa's Western Cape province. The government in Britain is beginning a 3-month-long consultation today into what access, if any, people aged under 16 should have to online social media and other platforms. The debate over a minimum age for social media use, has been fired up by Australia's decision last year to ban children from a range of platforms, including Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, and TikTok. The BBC's Zoe Kleinman has the details.
The possibility of a social media ban for under 16s has dominated the headlines, but the government is keen to hear views about a number of other ideas too. These include an overnight curfew on social networks and restricting young people's access to AI chatbots such as ChatGPT. It's also asking whether children should be able to use VPNs, which hide a user's location and can be used to bypass some restrictions. Campaign groups don't all agree that a social media ban is the best solution for children. Some argue tech firms should be forced to improve their platforms instead.
Recapping the top story, the Sawa Africa for Palestine has condemned the US-Israeli attack on Iran, which resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. For any news stories you may like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective. Get set and be ready to go. On the move with Falisa Tau and Benjamin Mashatama.
Oh yeah, bust down, bizarre, now. I'm a logo down. Cash money, I'm a yummy job. Young Soki, I'm a no day dog. Okali push you go the ball. Pass my G, my jet on. Sometimes me I pray to the Lord. That will be done in my life with the door. Many things I know fit talk. Money fits me, I don't wanna be poor. I'm a young man, know me. When you go by, they back on my body like scooty. I just don't pay for me, but sending my mom on some saburi. I don't do me, she won't walk with me. Jab boxing, you shit like me. You baby, go by. I do that, I go. Oh, yeah, I want. Bust down, beside, I'm a local guy. I do that, I go. Oh, yeah, I want. Bust down, beside, I'm a local guy.
I'm a local guy. I want to take care of me, Ghana. If you know be Messiah, bound you must make me $1 million sire. Me Ghana, me Ghana. Got to give me to you every only Maya. You know be money, I put my car. Perfect me, my rhyme, my opera, bouncer. You bless it, go shit for more. Poverty, by me, go you go some your bed. She look at telling this on the rock. Once beat it, twice shot. All up on a lot. Say, if you choose that drug, I go take you overdose. Go and Japurata, Kimaro Bulon, Pampe, agent, loan in my zone. The credit a lot, I want to see for my phone.
I do that, I go. Oh, yeah, I want. Bust down, beside, I'm a local guy. I do that, I go. Oh, yeah, I want. Bust down, beside, I'm a local guy.
When you white them fuck, we like me, but I be like this. Waluto ni Uluwa lo mbaleshi. I'm a really Uluwa lo show. I be barry when you kill a break. When you pay don't you tell me more para this celeb. I don't really want him to select. You could put that in Motia get. No more no parry, I don't try to get. If you lie, me, you'll look at me the same pill. In the past, with my jumper. Collect come a big deal. Correct me, my potato, or a left bill. They say no snake, my boo. What got to see what I'm seeing, you can carry go. You want it, ready to do. Ready to do, ready to type, I can't buy you.
I do that, I go. Oh, yeah, I want. Bust down, beside, I'm a local guy. I do that, I go. Oh, yeah, I want. Bust down, beside, I'm a local guy. Focus, always on my grind, with them bad ride. Go don't go back. I need share good, like my money, la satira. And if you talk, I know get stamina. My swag is for foreigner. I want my capital. No sorry, we're Burj Khalifa. Put the power now. Let's stop with the Yankee now.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Historia msikilizaji ya Valentine Day au siku ya wapendanao ilianzia katika nyakati za kale za dola la Roma. Watafiti wengi wa historia wanaamini kuwa siku hii inahusishwa na sherehe za kipagani zilizokuwa zikifanyika kila mwaka katikati ya mwezi Februari. Msikilizaji, sherehe hizo zilijulikana kama Lupercalia na zilifanyika kuadhimisha uzazi, upendo na mwanzo wa majira ya kuchipua.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800-428-428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palisatawo.
Have you ever
heard of something called the 4B movement. Well, this is an Asian movement that has taken the likes of China by storm, where women have decided that they will no longer bear children. In fact, it's gotten so bad that there are parts now of Asia where people, or women in particular, have followed the 4B movement. This was made quite popular in South Korea, so much so that for the first time in 2024 and 5, South Korea didn't have a grade 1 class. This is how much women had made a conscious decision to not get married and not have children. But of course, this is an extreme example that's happening in South Korea. But outside of this, there is a huge movement around the world where people are deciding to stay child-free. No, not childless, because being childless means you just haven't had children. And being child-free is an intentional and conscious decision to just never have children, to just do you, live your life the way you wish without having children. A lot of times our cultures, especially on the African continent, have steered women from day one of their lives towards motherhood. Despite all the gains that women have made in society, they still face enormous pressure and expectations to become mothers. And on the other side, child-free women and child-free people are often stigmatized, misunderstood, and alone. Well, not really alone, definitely not lonely, because this is an intentional choice after all. We're going to unpack, navigating the choice to be child-free in this hour of the show. We have on the line with us clinical psychologist Charity Mkone, but we also have a great example of someone who decided to remain child-free. This is Jean-Marc Groenewald joining us on the line. Himself and his wife made a conscious choice not to have children. Thank you so much for joining us, Charity, as well as yourself, Jean-Marc. It's a pleasure to have you guys this morning.
Thank you very much for having us.
Well, I'm going to start with you, Charity. I'm very conscious to say child-free is not childless. And if you could really unpack the difference in the decision between these two, being childless and being child-free.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right that there is a stark difference between the two, because being child-free means that it's a conscious decision that one has made to be without children or to not reproduce offspring. And oftentimes it is distinguished from being childless, because someone who is childless is someone who has been consciously attempting and often failing to have children or to bear children. So there is something about a conscious decision that one makes to be without children and takes the necessary measures and steps to ensure that that does not happen.
Well, let's speak about how, just generally and traditionally, society has always sort of set the mark of what one's life trajectory should be like, right? You're young, you go to school, maybe you work someday, and then you maybe get married and have children. And somewhat, even those expectations shifted, but still remain the same in some ways in terms of, maybe not that much of an expectation of someone to get married, but still a big expectation that you will have children one day.
So it is certainly something that society has placed as almost a natural progression of life and how things should be. And I think what is more important to flag and to speak about is the value